Earlier this year, the President of the United States went on social media and called the Pope weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. And the Pope fired back, on the record, saying he had no fear of the Trump administration and that the gospel is not meant to be abused the way some people are doing. A sitting U.S. president and the leader of 1.4 billion Catholics publicly at war. But here's the thing. This Pope almost didn't happen. And if he hadn't, the world looks completely different right now. On May 8th, 2025, white smoke rose over the Vatican, and the name announced to the world was Robert Francis Prevost, a Chicago kid from the south suburbs who grew up in a devout Catholic family, studied math at Villanova, and then spent 20 years doing missionary work in the poorest parts of Peru. He took the name Pope Leo XIV, becoming the first American pope in the history of the Catholic Church. And this part is important. Nobody really saw it coming. Vatican insiders had actually ruled out the idea of an American pope. The reasoning was simple. The United States is already the world's most powerful nation. Giving an American the papacy, too, felt, to many cardinals, like too much power concentrated in one country. Leo was considered a dark horse, a centrist, someone the Italian press described as cosmopolitan and shy, and crucially, appreciated by conservatives and progressives. He kept his head down. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't campaigning. He was the kind of man who, when Pope Francis called him to Rome to oversee the selection of bishops worldwide, reportedly said he preferred to stay in Peru. That humility is exactly why 133 cardinals eventually chose him. In fewer than 24 hours of conclave, it was done. But what if those cardinals had voted differently? What if the votes had gone to someone else? An Italian, an African, an Asian cardinal? What if the man from Chicago had stayed in Peru, unknown to history? This is where it gets interesting. Scenario 1. The conclave picks an Italian. For centuries, the papacy was almost exclusively Italian. If the cardinals revert to tradition in 2025, the world gets a very different message: no American. No symbol of the church moving toward the global south and the Americas. The 1.4 billion Catholics in Latin America, where nearly 40% of all Catholics live, feel that shift immediately. The church signals it's looking inward, not outward. Now here's where Trump enters the picture, and this is the key. Robert Prevost, before he became Pope, was already publicly clashing with the Trump administration on social media. He'd reposted criticism of J.D. Vance on immigration. He'd called out policies that separated families. He had a record. An Italian pope, or any pope who hadn't spent 2 decades walking alongside the poor in Peru, almost certainly doesn't come in with that same fire. The confrontation we've seen between the Vatican and the White House in 2026 probably doesn't happen. The church stays quieter, more diplomatic, more strategic, which sounds like a good thing. But consider what gets lost. When Pope Leo condemned threats to destroy Iranian civilization as truly unacceptable in April 2026, and Trump attacked him for it on social media, Leo didn't back down. He said he was not afraid to speak. He reminded the world that the gospel cannot be weaponized for political ends. Without Leo, who says that? Who has the standing and the courage to push back on the most powerful political office in the world from a moral, not political, position? The ceasefire calls in Ukraine and Gaza that Leo has repeatedly made, softer or absent. The warnings on AI concentrating power in the hands of a few, gone. The voice reminding the wealthiest nations that migration is a human dignity issue, not a crime, silenced, or at least significantly quieter. Scenario 2. An African pope is elected. This one is genuinely fascinating. Africa is the fastest growing region for Catholicism on earth. A Nigerian or Congolese pope would have been historic in a completely different way and would have shifted the church's moral focus toward Christian persecution in sub-Saharan Africa, a crisis that's been undercovered for years. No Trump conflict, but also no American Catholic identity moment. No Chicago pride. No, the Pope is one of us. The optics of faith in America change completely. Here's what this alternate history really teaches us. Leo XIV became Pope almost despite himself. He didn't want the spotlight. He asked to stay in Peru. And yet, because he was the kind of person who spent his life serving people nobody else was watching, he became exactly the kind of leader the moment demanded. The Trump-Pope conflict that's dominating headlines right now isn't really about two men. It's about two completely different ideas of what moral authority looks like. One says power is the point. The other says power is a responsibility. In a world where Leo XIV never becomes Pope, that argument still happens. It just happens without someone willing to say on the record that they have no fear of the most powerful office in the world. And that, more than any election, any policy, any tweet, is what makes this papacy historically unique. So, what do you think? Does a different pope change the global conversation? Does the Trump-Vatican conflict even happen without Leo XIV? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. If you're new here, this channel is all about rewriting the moments that shaped our world. History, politics, religion, pop culture. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I'll see you in the next one.